Matt Aitchison, welcome to the Rich Equation podcast.
Brother, thanks for having me on, man. Always great to connect.
Always great to connect. I'm very excited for everything we're going to get into today. I think we're going to get really deep in some important topics that are relevant to today and everything that's going on in the world. But it's always nice to meet and talk to a fellow entrepreneur, a fellow investor, a fellow podcaster, and then most importantly, a fellow girl dad.
That's right. I mean, that's the most important one, right?
That's the most important one. So you have two girls. I don't know about your family. So tell me, two girls. How old are they?
Yeah, I got Ella, who is my oldest and is kind of my mini me in terms of personality wise. She's 8. And then I got Evelyn, who is 5. And then Marie, my wife, and I have been married for 6 years, together for 11.
Amazing. Good, man. I love it. It's always nice to see a girl dad. So how's girl dad life?
Oh, dude, it's great. I mean, I'm sure you know, those ages are so much fun. You know, I wasn't really a big fan of the newborn, stage. And then as their personality started to develop, it got more and more fun. But like 5 to 8, I think, is the sweet spot, to be completely honest, because they're, obviously a lot more self-sustaining, but at the same time, super adventurous, still want to cuddle, still love dad. They think I'm the coolest dude on the planet right now. So I'm running with that as long as I can. Right. I want to be one of those dads that, I always hear people say like, oh yeah, enjoy it because it won't last. And I'm like, maybe not for you, but that's kind of always been my mentality on a lot of things where, a lot of people, I feel like, justify a subpar result or something mediocre in their life or in their marriage or their relationship with their kids or in their business because that's what has been accepted or okayed by other people in society. And not that I'm saying that that's a bad thing or that's wrong, but it's just not for me. I'm like, I want to be best friends with my kids all throughout their teenage years. When you tell me that those are the toughest years and when, girls don't want to be around their dad, those are the years that I'm going to try 10 times as hard to be more intentional, more purposeful, to ensure that they want to kick it with me. They want to travel with me. They want to tell me everything. They do trust me. And so, that's the same thing I think in my marriage, same thing in my business. It's like, I don't want to be the 99%. I want to be the 1%. And that's kind of how I approach, everything in my life. So right now I'm definitely in that 1% with my girls, and being a dad and just tons of adventures and travel and, quality time. And it's a fun season right now, man.
Well, that's why you're so successful also, right? Is that you have to think like the 1%. And I think it's something about society and conforming to complaining and finding reasons why you can't, there's excuses or this or that. And you're right. I'm at the 3 to 5 year old age. And so we're past the diapers and all those kinds of things, which you're talking about. So they're starting to develop personalities and have full conversations. And it's freaking cool. It's freaking cool.
It really is.
Yeah. So how are you, man? How is business? How is life? What's going on in your world? I don't want to spend so much time introducing you because people can spend that time looking you up and looking up what's going on in your ecosystem and how you got here. So what's going on right now?
Yeah, right now, as I was sharing with you a little bit, last year was probably one of the most challenging years ever in my life, in business, in personal and family life. We had multiple deaths in our family that were not expected. I had some challenges in business that I did not plan for or expect. And last year was tough, man. It really was one of those things where it really tested my resolve. And mind you, I've had rock bottoms and hardships in my life. My stepmother was diagnosed with cancer on a Saturday and she passed away on a Tuesday. I was expelled from high school. I was, arrested in college. So I've had those hardships in life, and, I call them my oh shit moments, where you're like, oh shit, I better figure something out here. Cause it's one of those things where I think everybody deals with hardships. You either lay down or you lean in. And every time, you kind of hit those rock bottoms, I have always leaned in because my, outlook is there's no other option. And so last year was one of those years for me, and it really weaponized me for this year. Weaponized in my world is, when we all have kind of these tools on our tool belt of life or tools on our tool belt of business. And last year put a lot more tools on my tool belts that weaponized me to, be more confident in handling, the future challenges that I know life is going to bring at me. And so this year, last year I exited 2 of my hotels, which was great from the perspective of, financial abundance in a great way, before kind of, the market started softening up. And so that really freed up a lot of cash and liquidity for me, to kind of have some also time freedom to, be doing a lot more traveling. We just got back from a week and a half in Hawaii with the kids.
Best.
And, that was amazing. And right now I'm just in a really fun and exciting space of investing in a new company, that I'm spending a lot of time in. That's in the hospitality world, something you and I are very passionate about. Mm-hmm. And it's a spirits and a distillery company. So really excited about what I'm working on with that project, and that being a little, another vertical off of kind of like I look at my core business of hospitality in hotels as my tree trunk. And, there's a lot of branches that go off of that in terms of hospitality. And so really exploring more and leaning more into that world, because that's really been a passion of mine. I've been investing in real estate and commercial real estate for the last, 12 years. But it was about 5 years ago that I found hospitality and realized, man, this is amazing. Not only is it, real estate based, it's got all the advantages of real estate. It's got, the cash flow and the monetary upside that I look for when putting my time and energy into something. But then there was this other side of, hospitality that was ultimately all around experiences, and not only for myself and for my family. I can't take my girls to go have fun at my liquor store or my strip center, but I can take them to my hotels, and we can go and travel and enjoy things together from that. And so it became kind of this lifestyle play, and I really leaned into that. And right now I'm just obsessed with all things hospitality.
I love that. So you started your real estate career. I want to get into hospitality here in a second, but you started your career in about 12 years ago in the real estate investing side. And I think often, and you promote real estate and commercial real estate, and you talk about it really eloquently. Give people some idea, because I think often people don't really invest in real estate, perhaps because the benefits take so long to achieve, right?
Yeah.
So tell me, you jumped into it, and tell me a little bit about the life cycle of that process over a 12-year period of time, right? Because I'm sure in the beginning you're like, okay, wait, is this really, I'm going to throw some money at this. Let's see what happens. You get some tax benefits early if you have passive income, but really the wealth takes time. So Speak to that over a period of time, because you've kind of gone through a couple of those cycles.
Yeah, I think I was fortunate enough to have some really great mentors early on in my life. And people always ask me man, how did you become successful? And my one answer is I was just dumb enough to believe in myself and smart enough to take action every day.
I love that.
I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm not, the fastest, the strongest. I never have been. So I kind of, over the years of my life before I got into my professional journey, I was a scrapper. I was a hustler. I was just somebody that, knew I wasn't going to be the best. So I had to make up for that with my work ethic and the stamina and the consistency that goes along with that. And so that really carried over into my professional journey. And when I first got it started, I started out as a realtor. I mean, I made $30,000 my first year. And I realized quickly that was not going to get me to where I wanted to go. And I wanted to be in a space that allowed me to build wealth, that ultimately unlocked more freedom. 1, financial freedom, then 2, financial freedom, and then ultimately, impact freedom, relationship freedom, things like that. And that led me into finding, a focus in flipping houses. And so I've, flipped a couple hundred houses over the last decade, but that was, vertical income. I had to show up and grind for that every day. I was only as good as my last flip. And so I started taking some of that income and started buying rental properties. And as I started buying single family rentals, again, the evolution of you don't know what you don't know until you get in there and, get enlightened. I realized that, single family properties weren't necessarily going to align with my financial freedom and wealth goals in the time frame that I wanted to achieve them. So I kind of had to re-engineer my plan again. And that's what led me into commercial real estate. And I'm a big believer in, I'm good with delayed gratification. Yes.
Yeah.
I do like things fast as possible, just like everybody does. But I really have this mentality of what I call the crock pot mentality over the microwave mindset. And I think a lot of people who fail at, whether it's real estate investing, whether it's in business, whether it's with your health, whether it's with anything that is worthwhile, is they've got the microwave mindset. They want it fast. And instead, what the reality of the situation is it requires a lot of ingredients coming together in a crock pot over an extended period of time to create something really great and really special, right? Yeah. And we all could say man, my grandma's crock pot dish is way better than, the frozen meal that I get in 30 seconds out of the microwave. Of course. And so, right. And so that's been my mindset with real estate. And I'll say this, I have failed my way forward, and, I've had sleepless nights, and really anybody, this, that is successful and take risks and bets on themselves, there's a lot of pain and hardship that is a part of that path to progress.
Love it.
And so I've really embraced, those failures over the years, and it's really forced me to metamorphosize my mindset, my disciplines, my habits, and who I am as an individual, over the years. And that has also been a journey in real estate investing. And so I was broke when I bought my first house. I was 21 years old. It was the famous cat lady house in the neighborhood. She had over 100 stray cats in her house. And I bought her house for $75,000. And I remember signing the real estate contract. And I walked out of there, and I was doing the Aaron Rodgers fist pump. I was Tiger Woodsing it up on the way to the car. And I got in the car and I was like, oh shit, I've never bought a house in my life. I have $800 in my checking account. I have $6,000 on credit cards, and I still live at home with my dad. How the hell am I going to buy this house? And ultimately, right, just by taking that action, my belief was, well, I'll figure it out. And one of my early mentors taught me was say yes and figure it out later. And so that became kind of my mindset and mentality. And I ultimately ended up buying that house using 100% of other people's money and how I structured the deal. And after paying everybody off, I netted $106,000 on that flip. And that to me was my light bulb moment of, you don't have to have a lot of money to get started in real estate. As you want to get bigger and go into larger assets, it's a little bit different of a ball game, right? A $75,000 house is different than maybe a $7.5 million hotel. But that being said, it kind of got me on that path and helped me start to figure out, how I could connect the dots based on where I wanted to go and when I wanted to be there by. And so real estate investing is one of those amazing vehicles that is a crock pot wealth building vehicle. It's not a lightning in a bottle, get rich quick, type of industry that a lot of people think it is. And so most people that jump into that space with that type of mindset ultimately end up getting their ass kicked and, leaving with their tail in between their legs. And mind you, I did get my ass kicked, but I kept coming back for more. And I guess I'm just a glutton for punishment.
Yeah. And people also forget that real estate is a business just like everything. 100%. It's not, you don't just write a check and all of a sudden you become wealthy. You have problems, you keep, there's things to solve. It's a business. It's not just like something you can walk away from.
Well said.
Let's talk about hospitality. I'd love to get your perspective on sort of the trajectory of hospitality as a real estate category. I feel like from my perspective, the hotel market has already sort of seen its recession, if you will. We'll talk about other categories and the economy in a second, but let's just stay with hospitality for a minute. What are your thoughts on where hospitality is going in the next few years? Travel and entertainment, flight travel, people are moving, business travel, and, hotels are at the highest occupancies and ADRs than they've ever been. We still have probably some losses we need to make up for in the last couple of years, talk about the debt. So let's get into hospitality for a minute.
Yeah. Now we're talking the good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just extremely passionate about hospitality and a big believer that at the end of the day, human beings are still going to need to have fun. Like, we need fun because fun equals fulfillment at the end of the day. And, travel is, for at least for me, and I know for many other people probably sharing the same perspective, is such a great eye opener to other cultures. It's a great eye opener to yourself. It's such an expansive space that brings so many benefits to it. And so in hospitality, in my perspective, it's really going through a renaissance right now.
Yeah.
It was kind of, forced to do that through COVID. And, we really saw some archaic and broken models that were outdated and didn't need to be done, the same way forever. Of course, prop tech has really changed kind of the guest experience in a lot of positive ways, and it's lowered, operating expenses in a lot of capacities and allowed, different automations and experiences and things for operators to, create more efficiencies and more profits, which really has allowed, mom and pops to play in a space that sometimes they weren't able to play in before. And so obviously you got Airbnb and you've got short-term rentals and you've got that whole dynamic that has kind of come in and created some healthy competition for hotels, which I think has been great. And then you've got, travelers. It's the mindset and now millennials being the largest age demographic in the world. And you got obviously the demographics that are coming right behind them that value experiences and value travel and value people oftentimes more than they value money or other things that previous generations did and the way they did it.
That's a huge shift, big right? Time. Even in two decades.
Absolutely. And and like you said, it's a shift that's happening very, very fast. And so, I think travelers who once needed to check in at a hotel desk and, every hotel brand that really it was kind of the same and somewhat sterile and bland and boring has now really been shaken up. And people are looking for creative spaces and eclectic experiences. And I think that trend is going to continue to get explored and expanded in so many cool ways. And I can't wait to see what that looks like. On the other side, when we're talking about business travel, I think, a lot of these hotels that were heavily reliant on business travelers are still going to struggle because you got the work from home trends that really have, just look at what's happened to office buildings,
we're going to get there. Yeah, for
country,
sure.
Which we'll talk about that. Retail buildings with Amazon. Well, now you've got this work from home dynamic that also has kind of changed the game a little bit for some of these hotel mid-tier brands that are kind of boring and sterile and really, 60 to 80% of their annual revenue was coming off of consistent travel, business travelers. And so I think that might create some distress and some opportunistic buys for retooling or retweaking certain assets that were heavily reliant on that. I'm a big believer, like, one of my markets is Lake Tahoe where, my hotels are at. And that market is, I think, somewhat these leisure markets that have year-round travel are going to do really, really well long-term. And what we've seen is actually institutional capital find these markets and start playing in them at a much higher level than they ever did before because it's a more insulated and safer market to be, allocating capital to. And so I think, we'll just use Lake Tahoe, it's got sun, sand, snow, and ultimately a lot of sunshine throughout the entire year that creates a draw and becomes a destination no matter what time of the year it is. The other side of it is it's got a lot of strong economies within driving distance of it.
Right.
And so when people are going, you know what, I'm not going to, fly across the country to go to Hawaii, or I'm not going to go across the pond to Europe.
We'll just spend a week in Tahoe from Sacramento or from SF
wherever, right?
Yeah, whatever, right?
And there are a lot of cool destinations like that around the country. I think those markets are going to do really well. And I think, hoteliers and hospitality experts that are really, exploring how to pair the destination with the physical asset and connect the experience between the two. There's already some really cool brands that are doing it at a really high level and crushing it. And I think we'll continue to see, that be a trend going forward.
Yeah, I love it. Let's talk about commercial real estate and you actually posted something about, I think it was a Bloomberg article about $1.5 trillion of commercial debt is coming due in by 2025. I know in California, office is like 40% vacant. I don't know what the nationwide rents are. So there's a looming bomb here in commercial real estate. And so let's talk a little bit about this. And I want people to understand really the dynamics of what's happening, why this is a threat. And then of course, where's the opportunity?
Yeah, always, man.
Yeah. And it's got to be an opportunity. If you're thinking like the 1%, you can't just think about the bomb, right? You got to think about, okay, what does this mean? What are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
But I think it's important to understand because the increasing interest rates were clearly being pushed into a recession in the economy. But there's a few other layers to this recession that I don't know if people are quite caught up with. And commercial real estate is definitely one of these pillars. So let's get into that first. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, commercial real estate is a big pillar. And I don't think, when you're driving through your town and your city and you see all of these buildings, we don't understand the magnitude that commercial real estate holds in our national economy. And there's a very large sequence of dominoes that are lined up behind commercial real estate when it comes to banking and, banks having significant positions in commercial real estate. Obviously, there's many different industries that are all tied to commercial real estate. There's tax revenue that's tied to commercial real estate. And a lot of cities and states, anywhere from 30 to 50% of their tax revenue comes from commercial real estate. So when you think about massive amounts of debt that could become stressed, well, who's taking that back? The banks are. The banks are not real estate investors. They're lenders. They make money off of, the commercial real estate. And so when they're taking back assets that are distressed or underwater,
and these are all, in some cases right now, Matt, sorry to interrupt you. These are unrealized losses right now too, right? On some of these institutional books.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is going to affect Main Street. This is going to affect people's 401ks in some capacity too.
And there's a lot of pension funds that are invested and have positions in commercial real estate. And when those,
it's ironic.
When those pension funds, which a lot of people who are living off their pension, that is their livelihood. That is their lifeline to, keeping the lights on, and they're on fixed income. The distress that hits commercial real estate, when those go under or they stop paying out dividends or the returns are drastically shifted and that gets passed back on to the pension fund, well, it's not really the fund manager that's, going to go without food and, being able to pay their electric bill. It's the person who's receiving that pension. So there's one, sector of that, right, that can be concerning. And I do believe that, the three biggest areas that we're seeing distress in commercial real estate right now largest is office. The second, and that's obviously heavily impacted, of course, from COVID, work from home, a lot of these,
it goes back to your business travel thing too. If people are not traveling to your office or traveling to see you at your office, it just kind of goes in alignment with that.
Yep, 100%. And then obviously you got, retail. A lot of that has been consolidated. You got, the juggernaut of Amazon has really changed the world in a big way, and the way consumers think and engage with, physical spaces and brands versus online. And so that is, looming right now. And then the golden child of, the pandemic, which was multifamily. And, there was a lot of people who bought commercial real estate, whether it was any of those asset classes, and they bought it off of this blue sky. Hey, the market's going to continue to go up. Rents are going to continue to rise. Vacancies are going to practically be non-existent. And, you know, we're going to see this pandemic party continue forever because of so much money that was printed. It needed to find a home. Well, a lot of people invested in assets based on the blue sky and didn't expect, oh man, now we have this inflation. Oh man,
very high prices.
Interest rates.
Yeah, very high prices too.
I mean, very frothy prices with very low cap rates, with very, you know, high rental projections. And now 12 months later, we're in almost the complete opposite of what a lot of those pro formas, you know, were projected to look like. And at the same time, a lot of the banks and a lot of the lenders that, you know, had debt tied to those assets, with the values dropping, with the cash flow dropping, and those individuals usually on short-term debt that needs to get refinanced, you know, within 3 to 5 years. Well, we're kind of at the beginning of that stage right now, and a lot of banks got, you know, alligator arms. There's like, hey, I can't find my wallet, man. I can't help you out.
That's
with
a whole. So what is really the outcome or the impact of this as people start to? Are we forecasting significant people going out of business, people having to give the properties back to the banks, or foreclosures? Is that what we're predicting here?
Yes, at least in certain sectors. I don't think in single family we'll see anything close to 2008. I think in commercial, we could see stuff very similar to what we saw in 2008. And ultimately, that is going to lead to more bank failures. You know, Warren Buffett talked about this the other day of saying, we're going to see more bank failures, but this is also not a reason for panic. And I think when you see a lot of mainstream news outlets and headlines, of course, we always know, one, it's for clicks. Two, it's not often always the most merited information. And three, it's oftentimes very inaccurate. And when it comes to bank failures and people go, oh my gosh, more bank failures. Well, guess what? There's been 597 bank failures since 2010 to as of 3 or 4 days ago. So that's an average of 49 bank failures every year. But you didn't hear about those because it wasn't that important. Well, because of the narrative that's going on right now with our economy, with recession, with interest rates, with distressed debt, with all of these variables, you get an SVB type of bank that fails, which of course was a large one. You know, it becomes a little bit more.
Well, I think people need to understand this, because what's going on, and you're spot on. Banks go out of business all the time. Their business is just like everything else. And if they go out of business, we've proven that we would protect the depositor. And I think the news narrative right now hasn't done a great job of communicating that. And it's creating all these dynamics of people moving money from your business to business banks, small local business bank, where you have a relationship to Citigroup or Wells or all these other banks. But what that does is it actually creates more pressure on the system in these small business banks, which actually do allow. So this is what I want really people to understand is, so Matt's trying to do a deal in Sacramento and he has a really great relationship with his local bank. But now that bank is starting to lose liquidity because everyone else is scared, quote unquote, right? And so they move their money out of the bank, they lose liquidity. And so now they have alligator arms and say, Matt, sorry, buddy. I know you have a really great business opportunity that creates, you know, growth and income and jobs and opportunity, but we can't lend to you, which then Matt then stops doing business and stops doing things and is just an additional pillar to putting people into pause and recession and slowdown. So I think people really need to understand that that's what's happening. And think of that as scale. And we're talking about everywhere, right? We're talking about businesses across the country. If you tighten credit, which is what this banking crisis is all about, if we tighten credit and businesses don't have money to invest, growth will slow down. They will not hire as many people. They won't buy as many tractors or machines or whatever, or properties, etc. and the impact to that to people every single day and jobs or increases in salary or wages, et cetera, then, so it's just a fascinating situation we're in.
It's the definition of that domino effect. And when you see it happening at the highest of levels, it's going to start trickling down to the lowest of levels. It's just a matter of time. And we're already seeing at the highest of levels. We're talking big hedge funds and institutional organizations that are either right now in default, are in foreclosure, are giving properties back, or they're trying to restructure debt, and it's just the beginning. So where's the opportunity in that? Well,
let's do it.
I think the opportunity is, we're going to see at the highest of levels and the lowest of levels, there be distress in opportunities that can create legacy wealth for you and your family forever. I mean, all it takes in some of these commercial properties, and I'm not talking about, $100 million building. I'm talking about a $1 million building, a $2 million building. Some of these opportunities can create enough cash flow and be a bargaining chip that you can use for the rest of your life to continue to play this money game, this wealth building game. All it takes is one of those. I mean, I literally look back in 2011 when I bought one of my first rental properties, and just to kind of connect some of these dots looking backwards, because I always say, like, one deal, one relationship, one, conversation, one opportunity can completely change your life forever, can completely change the future generations that come behind you and your family. And for me, I bought a little dinky, house in the hood that was, in a war zone, and I bought it for like $50K. And until last year, because the equity was really good in it, I had a good chunk of equity in it, and I had really low cash flow in it. So my return on my equity was really low. I was like, you know what? I'm going to cash in on that equity. Well, that little $50,000 house was worth $500,000 9 years later. And I used that money in a 1031 exchange to go out and buy another investment property that is netting me right now around $100,000 a year net. And its cost basis is around $2.5 million. And within 3 to 5 years, I'm going to cash in on that and 1031 exchange that into a bigger asset that's going to have more cash flow and potentially more upside. And I'm going to do that probably for the rest of my entire investing career in my life. And I'll probably pass whatever asset I end up in through my trust and will to my kids. And it all started from a $50,000 house in the hood in Sacramento, Both Park.
That's how it always starts, but it has to start.
Right. It has to start.
What is your, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so to wrap up that point, whether it is, a commercial real estate property or a single family real estate property, getting in the game, getting in the batter's box and, taking a swing, spectators don't get paid. It's always the players who are in the game that have the opportunity to get on base and put points up on the scoreboard. So you have to first, get in the game. And sometimes, I've been in the batter's box and I've struck out many a times, but after a while, you see enough pitches coming across the plate, which ones you want to start swinging at. And that's where I'm always trying to encourage people is, just get in the batter's box. You don't have to know it all. But if you have the right people around you, you have a second set of eyes, or you've got a group of people that you can run a deal by, you can have somebody be a safety net for you. Lean on somebody else's experience and wisdom when you don't have it yet yourself, to at least give yourself the opportunity to get in the game and score some runs.
What should we do to prepare for this season? You personally have created a little bit of liquidity by selling some assets. Should we be hoarding cash? Should we be looking for deals or opportunities? Should we be preparing our tax returns? Give us some tactical things of what we should be doing in terms of preparing for this and knowing how and when to take action.
Yeah, I think number one is what I call the swan effect. What's your sleep well at night sleep well at night number? That first and foremost is kind of your, what do you need in your business operating account, or what do you need in your personal bank account to still be able to sleep well at night if, everything went to hell in a handbasket? I think that's number one. And most importantly, because when you're operating from a place of fear and scarcity, which I have, I've been in tight financial situations, and when I'm talking sleepless nights, I'm talking like I can't sleep for days on end because I'm freaked out about losing this, or, what if this happens and I don't have the ability to take care of my family or do X or Y or Z. So I think the sleep well at night number is important first. Then based on, and I like to chunk it down, like in this next season, we're not talking about being a billionaire in this next opportunity, but what is this next season's goal for you? And when do you want to be there by? Because if you're clear on what that looks like and what that timeline looks like, then you can start to reverse engineer a plan, a vehicle, an asset, an opportunity that fits that criteria. And then you can get much clearer on, well, how much cash do I need? Who do I need in my corner? What relationships do I need to be able to purchase this type of opportunity? And so I think that plan is next. And then from there, it's becoming bankable, right? Getting rid of bad debt. If you've got credit card debt, if you have any bad debt, pay that off. Of course, good debt, that's cash flow, bringing in cash flow, I think is always fine. But I went through my entire portfolio and I said, where do I have decent equity and really low returns on that equity? And I'm going to sell the dogs out of that portfolio. And so I've started to, even some I've decided I'm going to 1031 exchange to defer taxes. Others I'm like, I'm just going to pay the taxes just to have liquidity and cash on hand. Yeah. Because in the last cycle, I really, knowing now what I didn't know then, I was able to buy some amazing opportunities when I literally was broke and had no money, and I used other people's money. But I could have bought a lot more if I had a little bit more bankability with lending relationships. My credit was dialed in, I had cash on hand. And then the last piece is, dig the well before you need the water. When everybody is talking about how much opportunity is out there and how many amazing deals are out there, you're kind of already late to the table. So what I would do is, really start to lean in on building relationships with people that are on the front lines. Like I call them my army of brokers or my army of agents. I got people that every day are on the front lines of real estate investment opportunities. And my job is to build relationships with those individuals and put them on notice about what I'm looking for and how we can be, in partnership or in, business together. And those relationships have really created opportunities for me that, I wouldn't have had otherwise, or people would never find or know about unless they had that relationship. So I think those are some of the tactical things that I'm really, again, ramping up on, knowing that I think there are going to be some amazing opportunities here in this next really 2 to 4 years, 2 to 5 years, and just being patient. Like, don't feel like you have to do anything.
That's a key one.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting on more cash than I've ever had in my entire life. And it feels weird. It feels weird. It feels against, my investing philosophy and what I've learned, cash is trash and all of the things that, you hear people say. But I think at the end of the day, you got to do what you feel comfortable with. And some people feel comfortable sitting on 10% cash of their entire net worth. Some people feel okay with 50% cash of their net worth. Some people feel okay with all cash of their... Who am I to tell you what is the right thing to do?
Is not investing, I guess the question that comes to mind for me is not investing a strategy?
No. I personally don't think that, because I'm always investing. I'm always in an investment mindset. Instead of being like, oh, I'm not going to invest, I'm going to pause. That goes back to something that I really, really don't believe in, which is trying to time the market. And so while I'm trying to time opportunities, I am not trying to dictate what the market is going to give me and time when I'm going to get in or when I'm going to get out. I'm just playing the board
stay
game.
A buyer.
Yeah, I'm always a buyer, and I'm always looking for opportunities no matter what. And sometimes I'll buy a lot more and sometimes I'll buy a lot less, but not having an investment mindset and just being like, I'm not investing at all. The investment energy just shifts based on what vehicle I'm interested in. And obviously I've invested in the stock market. I've got insurance, investment vehicles that I'm putting money in all the time, 24/7. My real estate, purchasing has just slowed down because things were a little bit too frothy over the last few years, but I was still investing in all other vehicles that I believe in a holistic investment approach.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm always investing. There's always a bull market somewhere. You just got to find where that's at. And for me, it's right now believing that there's going to be some opportunities ahead. But if a deal came up today that penciled and met my investment criteria and was a part of my investment plan and vehicle for getting me where I wanted to be, when I wanted to be there by, I'm buying it. Whether it's an 8% interest rate and I'm paying an asking price, if it hits my criteria and I know exactly how to operate that asset, I'm going to buy it. I'm not going to wait for interest rates to go down and for me to get a deeper discount on that deal because everybody says the market is too good. But I am a big believer in underwriting worst case scenarios. And
I think every deal is a perfect deal for someone, right? Like they always say, like people are looking for perfect deals, but you need to make it a perfect deal.
Yep. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking about right now that I'm looking at and that, I am preparing for, being that I think certain opportunities are going to come up at certain times in the future, but I'm in contract on 2 deals right now. I'm always buying.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, listening to you talk, like most business owners, all their wealth is tied up in their business and including me, right? Like my core business is not real estate like yours is. My core business is something else. And often I find entrepreneurs, and a lot of listeners are entrepreneurs or people who own their companies, like all of their wealth is built into their business. And so we actually lack diversification completely. Mm-hmm. And maybe the investments they have are their home and maybe the building that their business is in. That's how diversified we are, right? And so, but people also often forget also that real estate is a business also. So Matt is diversified in multiple asset categories in real estate, but you're also looking at some other things. And so real estate kind of gives you a little bit more of that flexibility because you can go in and out of deals, in and out of markets, depending on your expertise, of course.
Yep. Yeah. And I think a holistic approach is something that, takes time. We talked about this in a mastermind group that I was in, and it really made a lot of sense to me. And when I started looking at all the people that I've modeled after, or I've really studied, or admired in terms of, building successful lives and businesses and, portfolios, they really mastered and focused in one vehicle until they hit 5 to 10 million in net worth. And then they really started to branch out and diversify. But they had a core cash wheel that was spitting off income. And that gave them the opportunity to then go out and start to diversify. And
that's an important that's a very important point.
And so that's something that don't try and invest 10 here and 50 there and 150 over here. And no, focus on mastering one vehicle that can become your cash flow machine that generates income to then go and allocate it in other areas.
Exactly. Yes.
But don't try and do all of that at once and get diversified all at once. I think master one thing, but then when you got all your eggs in one basket, if hawks start swooping in on one basket and all your eggs are in there, you might be in some trouble. So when you start to get to a point where you build enough wealth, as much as offense is important, I think defense and diversification is equally as important, because if you're up 3-1 metaphorically in the World Cup and there's 85 minutes left and you practically you're set, you won this game, you're not going to go and pull your goalie and start being aggressive on the net and taking risks that you don't need to take. You're going to pass the ball around. You're going to be smart. You're going to be intelligent. If there's an opportunity that presents itself, you'll take it, but you're not going to go and put yourself at risk to lose that game. And so I think when you hit that 5 or that $10 million mark or threshold, or for some people, right, it could be $1 million. Wealth building and financial freedom, the definition is different for everybody based on your lifestyle, your goals, all the things that you want to accomplish. That being said, when you've kind of crossed maybe one or two of those milestones or thresholds, you know, you can start to think about being a little bit more diversified and starting to take some of those risks or opportunities, but you don't want to expose yourself when you just don't have to, right? If you can just take small, smart, consistent steps over a consistent period of time. The beauty of the eighth wonder of the world, the compound effect, is that it gets sexier and sexier as time goes on.
I want to ask you a few final questions as we kind of wrap this up. And we've already been talking for a while, so we could talk forever about all these things. Right? Where are you learning information? What are you learning right now? What are your core sources of information? What are you reading right now? Let's talk a little bit about where you're getting good information from.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a student of life, and I'm always looking for my next teacher. So whether it's a book or a podcast or a mastermind group or, you know, an individual, I ask a lot of questions, hence, you know, the podcast, right? I think that's something you and I share, is we're just very curious people. And so I'm always asking questions. I'm always very curious about things. And when you ask quality questions, you find quality answers. And so I try and ask as many of those quality questions every day, whether it's to myself, whether it's to, you know, the grocery clerk, whether it's the, you know, wealthiest person I can talk to that day, whether it's in a mastermind group. I'm always trying to put myself in those types of situations. So obviously, right, we connected through a mutual friend that, you know, I met through a mastermind group. I'm trying to get in those rooms a lot of the times. You know, I'm constantly looking at different deals and investment opportunities, which when I've got questions on, you know, those types of things, it forces me to go and do research and further go down rabbit holes like that. But I've got, you know, through the podcast, it forces me every day to find value. And that keeps me in a constant state of what Jeff Hoffman, who's the billionaire founder of Priceline, taught me, which is info sponging. And info sponging is just carving out, you know, certain time blocks every day to learn something new. You hear people like Bill Gates, who reads X amount of time per day, Warren Buffett, X amount of time per day. So I read a lot. I'm constantly digging in on blogs and a lot of data and things along those lines. But I try and be as efficient as I possibly can, because I'm busy. You're busy. Yeah, we're all busy. So finding those efficiencies. In terms of economics, I really like Calculated Risk blog. They're great. They do a lot of dissection on, you know, economic reports that are consistently coming out. And then I've got, you know, other news outlets and platforms that are not mainstream, that are, you know, real people digging in on real stuff, giving their opinions.
What is that?
Like to try and,
I want that information. What is that?
I mean, on the news side of things, you know, I like Epoch News. They put out a lot of good stuff. It's pretty unbiased.
Right.
And so
it's just a conglomerate of all these news channels in kind of a digestible format.
Yep. I like their stuff. When it comes to real estate, Real Deal is good. Even CNBC puts out some relatively decent topics that allow me to dig in on some stuff. And then on the financial stuff, I get a lot of stuff from my co-host on my Wednesday episode, Ryan Breedwell, who runs a multi-billion-dollar financial shop, and they have access to a lot of data and information that doesn't get put out in mainstream media or any news outlets. So every single Wednesday, you know, we're doing our Money Moves podcast and, you know, dissecting reports and sharing financial thoughts and information that he's got access to.
I love that. I love it, man. So good. Final question, Matt. For you, what does it mean to live a rich life?
To me, to live a rich life is to leave everything on the floor every single day. Like my definition of a rich life is, if I get to the end of my life and I'm on my deathbed and I were to watch a video replay of my entire life, the good, the bad, the ugly, the peaks, the valleys, I don't care how much money I have. I don't care how many trophies I have. If I can say to myself, damn, that was a hell of a fucking ride, and I'm so grateful that I went on that and I have no regrets, that to me is a rich life. And that's ultimately what I want for most people. You hear, you know, all the different stories, the nurses talking about the 5 regrets, many people sharing their regrets on their deathbed. And to me, I just don't want to live with any regrets. So, whether that equals insane success and billionaire status and impacting, billions and millions of lives, or it doesn't, if I can still say that I played full out every single day and I had a hell of a time doing it, and I had some impact, most importantly, on my kids, to me, that's a rich life.
I love it. Sell yourself a little bit. I really appreciate you doing this. Honor you for everything that you're doing, but sell yourself a little bit. I know you have a podcast. Tell everybody what you're up to and how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, Millionaire Mind cast, top 100 business podcast. I've been doing that for about 6.5, 7 years now. So Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, we got episodes that come out there on all podcasting streaming platforms. You can check that out. I am on YouTube, putting out a lot more content on YouTube now that I have a little more free time. And I am on all social media platforms at official Matt EA. Feel free to reach out, say what up, let me know you heard me on the podcast, and always love connecting with people.
And we'll put all your social media links and everything in the show notes. But Matt, appreciate you, man. Really great discussion, and let's stay in touch. Love it.
Ashish, appreciate you, man. Thanks,
man.